Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Lee Spann.
All right, welcome back to the WFLA Now Stream Center for this episode of Run for Fun. Yeah, I got a full house. Now, this show is designed to show you just a few little things you can do to foster a really healthy relationship with running and exercise. I'm your host, Lee Spann. I'm a meteorologist here at WFLA. But I've also been running for more than 13 years, and I wish that I could go back and tell myself 13 years ago all the things that I've learned so that I didn't have to do quite so much trial and error. So that's, again, why we made this show. We want to share all that so there's not quite as much in the trial and error phase. And who taught me most of, not all of what I know is my coach, Maria. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Lee.
How is the weather starting to treat us,
It's so nice. It felt like I could actually breathe yesterday on my run. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, we spent so long in that throes of summer that even the tiniest little adjustment in the dew point and the humidity makes a big difference.
And I will remind everybody that 68 feels like you're flying now. 68 dew point is like, woo, but in May, everybody's complaining. Oh, it's so hot. I can't hit my paces. So just remember, this is the bonus part of the year.
I've gotten to hear this speech every 6 months for Maria for 13 years now.
It's true.
It's all about what you're used to, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why if you got used to the 75-degree dew point, 68 feels good. You get used to 55-degree dew point, 68 feels terrible. So
absolutely.
What we get used to. So especially when it's hot, but really all year long, your runs don't stop when you hit back to your doorstep again, because they have to continue with recovery. So that's what today's episode is not about running. It's about how to recover after the run so you can get back out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know as runners, we struggle with recovery. We don't want to sit still. We don't want to, slow down if we have to, but we do have to.
We do. So joining us also today is Cody Angel. Thank you so much for joining us, Cody. Now, he's with St. Pete Running Company, and he has been on the show a couple of times. But you're going to show us some of the tools, some ways to use those tools to help with that recovery.
I am. Thanks for having me back. And can I just put something out there?
Of course,
before
always.
we proceed, ladies. This is one of my favorite podcasts, and I've fallen behind. So I've been binge listening to Run for Fun podcast to get caught up.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say I really appreciated last week's episode about pre-race anxiety. And there's so much in there. So those of you watching or listening, go back and listen to it. I seldom listen to a podcast a second time, but there's so many nuggets in there from you guys. I'm going to go back and go through that again because there's a lot to uncover there. So.
And you've had many races in your life, and so you know what that anxiety can feel like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I often tell people who come in our shop, you're not actually nervous, you're excited, and kind of approach it from that way. And you're right, it can ruin your race before it starts if you don't know how to harness that energy.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, Cody.
Yeah.
Now everyone else can binge watch, binge listen, I guess. So why don't we talk a little bit first about Maria, why recovery is necessary, and that we're not just talking about literally putting your feet up. There's ways to recover that involve everything from what you eat to what you put on your feet.
Yeah. In order to get strong, we're breaking down our muscles and then we're rebuilding it stronger. It's kind of the same thing as weightlifting. If you're not giving your body the tools to actually rebuild those muscles stronger, you're just going to get weaker and weaker or stay the same. And nobody wants that, right? So we get really depleted when we're running. We're using a lot of glycogen, carbohydrates. And so if we don't put those back with protein, because protein's really important to rebuild those muscles, we're just going to stay depleted for the rest of the day. Also, if we're not getting sleep, if we're running the wrong paces on our easy days, that can prohibit recovery too. So there's a lot that goes into it.
So let's talk about what it feels like when you're not properly recovered, because most people say, okay, I'm going to start running, or I'm going to do a streak and I'm going to run every day, and eventually it gets harder and harder and harder, and people can stop because of it. But there's things you can do in between those runs to make it feel better.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important thing that people don't understand is sleep, actually. Sleep is the number one most important thing if you're training for anything. That's where our body recovers while we're sleeping. If we're not sleeping, we're not recovering. So that's number one, most important.
And it's free. That's a free thing. We're going to talk about some tools you can buy and help you.
Yeah.
But you know what? It is completely free.
It is free. And in this culture, we like to proclaim our busyness. So like, oh, we're so busy. We're so busy. We're so cool. We're so busy. I only sleep 5 hours a night. Well, the research has shown that if you're sleeping 5 hours a night, you're really at risk for a lot of things, not just under recovery, but, you know, you have a higher risk of heart disease, you have a higher risk of cancer, you have all sorts of different higher risks of Alzheimer's disease, all of it, if you're not sleeping enough. So let's stop bragging about not sleeping and you know, trashing our bodies. Let's stop doing that first. And let's try to sleep more.
Bring back in Cody, because we have a whole podcast. If you want to go back and look at previous episodes, there is one that's all about sleeping. So if that's something that's really your big problem, there's a whole episode on that. But the whole time Marie was talking, you were nodding your head yes to all of that. So what do you have to add to, you know, this part of recovery, sleeping?
Well, it just hit me like a ton of bricks that the things our moms told us 30 years ago were actually right about sleeping and eating.
To moms everywhere.
Yeah,
I hope you heard that.
Exactly. Thanks, Mom. In fact, I brought her in here last time.
You did bring her in here last time.
So yes, there's a theory of marginal gains or 1%ers, and it's fascinating stuff. And it's like you're that high school runner or that college runner trying to win a conference championship, and you could do one thing that makes you 1/2% faster, and eventually those add up and put you ahead of your competition. But I think the real point here is like, let's not put the cart in front of the horse. Like, what's the point of having $75 recovery socks if you sleep 5.5 hours a night?
Exactly.
Like, let's pick the low-hanging fruit first.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I think a lot of times Maria and I sound the same because we used to work together, and I learned so much from Maria when she worked in our running shop back in the day. And so, but yeah, like let's pick the low-hanging fruit and worry about sleep. Let's make sure before you spend $4 on one of those fancy energy gels, make sure you're not going into your long run like underfueled, right? Eat your vegetables, right?
Yeah. Make sure you're getting enough carbohydrates. Like, that's super important. Make sure you're putting your carbohydrates back after your run. That's really important. If you're not doing those things, it's silly to buy $1,000 compression boots to put on your legs. Like, I think Cody has a very good point with that. Now, I love my compression boots. I love them.
Tell people what compression boots are, because they are fabulous, but they're expensive.
Well, I have compression boots that go on my legs, and Cody can explain it a little bit better, I would imagine.
Sort of like a blood pressure cup.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it started post-op or maybe for diabetics, and it moved over into athletics. So it squeezes your feet, and then it squeezes your calves, and then it squeezes your quads and up to your glutes. So it's designed to facilitate better blood flow and get the venous return and get fluid moved back towards your heart. So it exchanges it with fresh oxygen-filled blood. So it's a way to kind of shortcut the system and recover faster. So if you were doing a long run, you could go get in your boots right after that, and your legs would just be a little bit less sore. So that's a really cool tool that a lot of professionals have utilized for a number of years, and now it's trickling down into the rest of us.
Yeah, and so that's a sort of high-end recovery.
Like that's high-end recovery for us.
If not many of us are going to be willing to spend, do you say like $1,000 or whatever.
The price point is coming down on those. I think the better the technology gets, the better the price point for the original ones get. So it is coming down. It'll be more accessible in the next few years, but it is high end.
Yes, and so when people think of recovery, they may literally just think of, okay, I finished my run or I finished exercising. Now I can just go sit, and that is recovery.
No,
but there's some active recovery you can do, and that includes what you eat. You mentioned the vegetables. You mentioned what mama told you. I mean, all of that goes into it.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, like in order, I would say, make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're eating before your run enough and after your run enough. And then I would also say active recovery, walk after a long run, walk a little bit. That helps blood flow. Actually sitting down for long periods of time after a long run is bad. And the last thing we want to do when we do a long run is walk. Nobody wants to do that, but it is the best.
We do not.
Best thing for your body, and especially after a marathon, it's very important to walk.
So let's go as kind of a step back into the science part of it. So what is happening to your body when you are using when you're exercising hard or you're running long distance or you're running a short distance? What are you depleting yourself of and what do you need to bring back? I mean, you mentioned the blood flow, but like what are you getting rid of that then you need to replace?
You're getting rid of your carbohydrate stores. You're getting rid of magnesium, potassium, salt, all that stuff through your sweat. And you have to replace all of that. Like I would say electrolytes, you really deplete yourself. Is there anything I'm missing here?
You got the big one. So glycogen. So you would turn, your body would utilize mostly carbohydrates and then in some cases fat at certain intensities.
Mm-hmm.
And it would, and hopefully not protein, but it could if it had to. And it would turn that into glucose, and then that's your energy. So if you run completely out of glucose, here's what we tell athletes. When you get done with your long run, hold your hand out in front of you and just kind of give your fingers a look. And if there's a little shake to it, just a little twitch, that usually means your blood sugar's low and you needed more glucose. So what you do is hop in your time machine, start all over again, and take more gel or have more carbohydrate throughout the duration.
Don't you wish we really had a time machine like that?
Oh, I've got some things I need to rectify.
Can we redo that again? Let's rewind.
Well, I was even saying that at the top of the show. I mean, 13 years ago, man, I would have known I would have had to have so many terrible days. I had no idea you were even supposed to drink anything but water afterwards. And so I would just feel like crap the rest of the day.
Well,
Imagine if someone had just said, hey, here's a Gatorade.
And I can't tell you how many old school runners I talk to that are like, I don't do gel. I don't take gels because I've never done it. I'm like, well, okay, I understand you've never done it before and you can get through it, but you are living under your potential. Mm-hmm. Who wants to live there? Like let's use the new research and not deplete our bodies as much, because the more you deplete, the more you have to regain afterwards, right? So if you can go in less depleted, we're always better off.
Yeah, that's just what I was about to say, is that when you think about after run recovery, the funny thing is you have to think about what you're doing before the run so that you're not having to replace quite as much, that you didn't use everything up, so that recovery gets a little bit easier. And then again, you're feeling more refreshed when you go out there, because if you're just continuing to deplete yourself, eventually you're not going to get back out there.
And there's a fair amount of research that says too that if you're in too deep of a calorie deficit and you're like trying to crawl out of the hole too much, that inhibits your recovery as well. Yeah. So
your body's working really hard.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're replacing calories as quickly as you can. Sometimes we have stomach issues after, and we have to wait a little bit longer, but you can always put something like chocolate milk or something into your body that's going to help aid in the recovery, and so that you're not in a calorie deficit, especially if you run in the morning. If you think about running in the morning, you're having a snack and then you run long, you're in probably 1,000 calorie deficit pretty quickly, even if you're taking gels. So you got to put in some of those calories back.
Got to put in the work even afterwards,
because your body has to work to recover as well.
And even before, after, if this makes sense, something we learned from cycling, like watching some of the big grand tours, and like there's domestiques that will tow like the contenders up to the mountain and pull them as far as they can, and then they pop, and then the guy's got to go win the race. But that guy's job is done for the day, and he's just got to spin his legs and get back to the top of the mountain to the finish line. And the team car will pull up and give him a recovery drink, and he's not even done with his stage yet. And so to elaborate what you just said, like you're burning 1,000 calories or more on an hour run. So why not, like, okay, I could make it another 30 minutes without sports drink or gel, but that's just going to put me in a bigger deficit, and caloric deficit jumps on us. So why not make sure I'm hydrated throughout the duration of the run, so you start recovering before the run's even done?
And then you run stronger and you're actually burning more calories too. So if you are not depleted, you can run faster and your heart rate will stay lower. Like if your heart rate is going sky high on your runs, it's probably because you're depleted in something. I mean, there is a little bit of cardiac drift that naturally happens, but we want to avoid it as much as we can. So fuel the body during, and then afterwards, you're going to be better off.
And I'm going to pull a little bit out of that, because most people think, okay, we're exercising, we can be losing weight at the same time. And again, that's an idea. But if you're fueling yourself, you can go a little faster, or you can run a little longer, and that is what is actually going to eventually help you lose weight, or because you're going to burn more calories.
Burn more calories in, calories out. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that as well. But we want to stop depleting ourselves, especially women tend to do that. We undereat. remember I talked about a couple podcasts about how we were, the carbo loading studies were saying that we weren't efficient in carbo loading, but really it was that we were so depleted going into carbo loading that we just actually,
got up to normal.
Met the normal limit. So we weren't getting the benefit just because we're already so depleted. So women, stop doing that.
And, it's interesting that how this discussion has gone is clearly most people think the recovery is happening afterwards, but we are letting people know that the recovery can start before, it can happen during, so that afterwards it's not as bad. So, you're not having to have so much recovery. So let's focus in now on what to do afterwards, because if it's a hard run, no matter how many gels you had, your body's going to be a little bit tired. I mean, so
sure.
What are some ways, some tools, some tips that we can do to make us feel better so that tomorrow we're right back out there with our shoes on?
What's your long run routine? I want to know.
Okay, usually, in my 20s, I would just lay in the floor in the fetal position for an hour. But I've learned since then.
We learned.
Yeah. No, first thing, I love what you said about having a little bit of a warm down. So just walk up and down the street a little bit. Make sure it uploads to Strava. Otherwise, you don't get any benefit from the long run. So it has to go on social media. And then after that.
But separate it from your run.
Yes.
We often tell people, imagine you hit start on a stopwatch. And from the time you finish the run, you got about a 30 to 45 minute metabolic window where you need to put some fuel in your body. Now, those of you listening, we're in Florida, right? And it's hot. And a lot of times the last thing you want to do is go eat a meal at the end of a 2-hour long run or whatever your long run is. So, but imagine you have to by the time that timer elapses. So it could be something cold. Like I actually do a little bit of dairy. So I like yogurt, occasionally chocolate milk, or I'll combine incomplete proteins. Maybe you have some hummus on a nice roll or something like that. So put food in, and then obviously water, and I like to do something with salt in it. So like a bit of an electrolyte drink, typically. I've spent some time at the Gatorade Sports Science Institute where they've got PhDs that just get paid to study this stuff. And what they told me last time I was there is 20 grams of protein seems to be the magic number for synthesis. So if you get a protein shake, one of these expensive things with 40 or 60 grams, you utilize the first 20 and you pee out the other 40.
Oh, good
right?
to know.
So the trick is have 20, wait a little while, have some
20 more.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you're a professional athlete, you play for the NFL or whatever, maybe you could have, and you're really consuming thousands of calories a day, maybe you could have 40 grams before bed if you're that guy who's just an animal, because your metabolism slows down a little bit throughout the duration of your sleep. But most people, we have 40 grams of protein before bed. We're going to wake up feeling not so good. But that's if you're a guy who's a big mileage or a professional athlete, something like that.
That's very interesting, because some of those higher protein ones I feel like don't taste as good. So we could go, so you can kind of scale it back, taste a little bit better, and then just have another one later on. That's good to know, because I'm trying to choke down this like 30-gram thing, and it is not delicious.
Yeah.
Or if we wanted to boil this down, and neither of us are registered dietitians, but you want to boil this down, look at the label and try to see that you're getting 20 grams of protein, and that helps rebuild the muscle. And then carbohydrate is kind of like taking your car to the gas station and putting fuel in it, and you're definitely going to need some of that too. So protein and carbs. And for me, I'm a salty sweater. My dog loves it when I get back. salty. But so I just put some electrolytes in. Make sure it has sodium, because sodium is what gets the water into our cells through the cell wall. So you could load up on these fancy like magnesiums, and you could have coconut water, but you got to have some salt. Just some old-fashioned sodium's got to be in there too.
And everybody makes a big deal about salt. Salt. Athletes, especially in Florida, need salt. Obviously, you got to pay attention to what your doctor says, but for the most part, if you're sweating in Florida, you need salt.
Especially 6 months out of the year, you're sweating so much. People who live in Florida who don't exercise probably need to add, because you're sweating, you don't realize what you're sweating, just running errands, walking the dog, all that kind of like just normal activity is really dehydrating you when it's 75-degree dew point and 90 in the afternoon.
Yeah. So after running, obviously start by fueling, and then you've got some time on your hands. So some tricks I do is jump in the shower, and then as soon as you're done showering, I put on these compression tights.
Let's get a little closer look at those. Yep.
So I want to be very clear that they look like leggings, but they're not just leggings, right? They're more expensive to produce and more expensive for us to buy, and they're for recovery. So the way these are knitted, they're circular knitted, and they pull tighter further away, like closer to your feet, it's tighter, and then they're graduated, meaning as they get closer to your hips, there's less pressure, and that makes your blood flow faster back to your heart. So get out the lactate before it crystallizes into your muscle bellies. So lactic acid and the stuff that could sit there, and then you feel stiff later. This has to work if you put it on like within 10 minutes. So eat within 45. I would say put this on within 10 minutes. So you got to hurry up, get in the shower, and then get these on.
I was just about to say, how are you supposed to get those on when you're sweaty? So shower first.
Yeah. So I love to do that. And there are studies. There's a lot of studies on this stuff. It's hard to, again, jump in that time machine and prove their validity throughout your racing and running. So you kind of look at world's best practice. Is Kipchoge wearing this stuff? Like, is that?
Yeah.
But they do have a lot of stuff that says it helps you recover better. So I would say go with the critical mass of data and wear these right after training. Or you could sleep in your compression socks is another one. So you can facilitate better recovery. And then the other thing I've got, if you want me to roll on before you want to, a massage stick.
Yay, everybody's favorite.
These things are really inexpensive. They don't break because there's very few moving parts, and they're easy to use. But if they're out of sight, they're out of mind. I'll hold this up so those watching can see it. So what you do is you rub your legs going towards your heart, always and only towards your heart to facilitate blood flow.
So not up and down.
Just before, just after, go just up for sure. Maybe up and down if you have targeted areas before, but you really want to, just like how your massage therapist would go towards your heart virtually all the time. Same thing with this, and it just helps trigger point, like get out the trigger points, get out the pinpoint, the real sore areas for us. If you don't use this, you guys use toothbrushes, right? So this is a toothbrush for our legs. And we hear it in our store sometimes. They're like, I get a massage like once a month. And like, that's good, but that's like going to the dentist and not brushing your teeth in between visits. Like, you got to do both. And so a massage stick is a cheap, easy investment. And the return you get versus the cost is one of the best ratios you can probably invest in. So
Great metaphor. You continued it on to from the massage to the massage.
I know, right?
And get a massage. I'm not saying I love getting them. I think
Go to
that's
the
important.
dentist.
Yeah, go to the dentist. Listen to your
I
mom
use
30
that
years
too,
ago.
before my run. Like a lot of times I use the stick before my run because you have that lousy first mile. That can cut down on the lousy first mile usually because you're a little bit more warmed up.
Yeah, so those who are training for something, after we also say, like, before bed. So brush your teeth, brush your muscles, and go to bed every night. Go to bed with your compression pants on.
And now, would you do that in lieu of, the rolling? Or are they either or, like where you roll it on?
Like a foam roller.
So the foam roller is really good for the hips and the bigger muscles with a larger circumference, hips, glutes, quads. And this is better for those further away. Would you co-sign?
The foam roller, too, you can lean heavier on it, so you can get a little deeper with the foam roller. It's hard to get extra deep on those trigger points, especially with the smaller stick. So,
but then you get to have an arm workout as well
True.
after your leg workout.
Yes. And then I've got this other thing, this triangular device here.
Oh, yeah.
Percussion massage has been a
love
thing.
mine.
Yeah.
10 years ago, these things were like 90 decibels, right? So nobody had them because they sounded like a jackhammer. But the technology is really quiet now. This one's made by Theragun, but there's a lot of good ones out there. And it's a way to pinpoint trigger points after. So get into this, too, while you're checking out Strava to make sure that you hit all your splits on there. But I also wanted to remind the listener that this has been shown to help bring down your adrenal system. So I don't like to use it before running, but definitely after and occasionally before bed. So if you want to go back to that
I
sleep.
didn't know that.
Yeah, quality of sleep conversation. Maybe do this also before bed just to bring your system down a little bit and hopefully help you ease off into a deeper sleep sooner, Maria. So I might even play this. I don't know if those can listen. Yeah. Sounds like the car on the Jetsons, remember?
Oh, it is so silent.
Yeah.
And they speaking of, they used to, when they first became more widely available, they were also very, very expensive. But the cost for these things, as Maria said, as more of them come out, and there's more, you can get a percussion gun, a therapy gun pretty cheap now in places.
I think under $200. Look for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all that.
Great Christmas present.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
Your runner friend will be very gracious. Mine came as a gift, and there was almost a tear when I opened up the box because I knew that it was going to be so helpful to use over the next.
For sure.
Yeah. And we tell people, like, in the store, they think I'm kidding, and I'm half joking. Like, we're not going to let you buy this unless you promise to use it, right? So if you're anything like me psychologically, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So don't leave your foam roller in the back of the closet behind your high school yearbook from 30 years ago or whatever. Like, leave it near the couch where you see it, or in my case, leave it near the espresso machine because you know you're going to hit that. So have this stuff where it's readily accessible, and there might even be some value in, we know it's important to the night before your long run to have everything laid out, to have your kit ready to go, so you're not 5:30 in the morning trying to find your shoes or whatever. Maybe have your recovery laid out as well. So when you get home, maybe you're a little tired and you're not a lot of glucose floating around in there. You don't have to problem solve. You know where everything is.
And I like the one that you're showing, and actually the one that I have and my foam roller too. Very bright colors.
Yes.
So that again, even if it's in the corner, you're like, I see you. I know I'm supposed to foam roll. I see you, bright green foam roller. But
I like the
helpful.
size of that one too, because you can take it like, for me as a mom, I usually was going to a swim meet right after. So I didn't have a lot of extra time to like mess around. So just take it, put it in your purse and go. Yeah. Do it at the swim meet. It's no big deal.
And there are shoes, right, that can help, like the UFOs that can help as well. Do you have some of those?
I've got them right here.
Look at that.
And these aren't even my size, but hey, so I think let's rewind just a bit. Shoes are super important. So make sure you're doing your run on shoes that don't have 350 miles on them, because you'll have dead legs, right? So make sure you change out your shoes to where, figure out when you start running and you're getting that bilateral dull ache on both legs. It's just like a flat feeling. For me, it's that normal loop around the park near my house, and I get done and I'm achy on both hips. That means I need new shoes. So listen to your body whisper. Make sure you're not training on really worn out trainers. And
because
then
again, those are one of the things to recover before you run.
Yeah.
Because you're setting yourself up to not hurt as much afterwards.
Yeah, and tell me if you agree as a coach, Maria. One more addendum. We're telling people who are properly training for something, have a thicker pair of shoes. This is the last 10 years this has been a thing. Have a thicker, cushier pair of shoes for your long runs. So have a long hauler and a regular shoe. Years ago, we lived in Australia. We used to call them our heavies. You had your long run shoe, and they were heavy and thicker and more padded. Now they're not even heavy with the way midsole foams have gone. Are you telling people that?
Yeah, we do. I always prefer my people to have a long run shoe or a regular trainer, and then something we use for speed work or tempo that's a little lighter. I prefer when you call it the SUV to the Ferrari.
This is the SUV.
It makes me feel much more successful when I have
SUVs and Ferraris.
Yeah, for shoes.
Because everybody loves SUVs and they also want to be fast.
Yes, exactly.
And if that's the case, what UFOs you slide on right after? This is the Love Boat? I don't know.
I don't know.
This is what you put on.
Not for fashion.
Not for fashion. Yeah. This is what you put on right after running, or in many people's cases, we live in a humid subtropical climate. So like 10 months out of the year, we're wearing these. They're called UFOs, and they are recovery footwear. They sort of invented the category of recovery shoes. So the idea is that it cradles your foot. It's a monolithic, it's just one piece, and it's a foam that only they have the recipe for. And in fact, only a few people in the world know the recipe, is what the UFOs guy was telling us. But the idea is you put this on right after training and wear it to help your feet recover. So think of it as a massage for your foot, and it takes away some of the pressure points, cradles your arch. They do feel, full transparency, they feel really archy probably the first 45 minutes you ever wear them. And then after that, your foot sort of sinks in to the footbed. So those of you who are listening that have had UFOs, you probably know what we're talking about.
We sell a ton of them at the store. Everybody loves UFOs.
Yeah. You don't even have to run. Just put them on and wear them. So.
I have, when I see people out like wandering around in their UFOs, people that I'm like, now, are you a runner, or do you just think that these are the most comfortable shoes? Because it is like walking around kind of in a cloud. I mean, they're so squishy and wonderful for your, but that's what we typically use after a run, but I don't necessarily ever go shopping in them. When I see people that I'm like, oh.
Yeah. One of my coworkers is like, she finally pulled the trigger on these, and she's like, can we just now agree that I'm never going to get married? That's
Yeah, that's the sign I've given up.
that's it. But hey, we can all agree that it's function before fashion.
Yeah.
And who's looking at your feet anyway? Like, I'd
Yeah.
rather feel good. So
Oh,
That's
100%.
yeah. But yeah, definitely have a pair of shoes to wear around, a nice soft OOFOS or something like that after training for at least a few hours.
And I mean, I do wear them when I'm doing housework and things like that, because I do think that by wearing them, my body feels a little bit better, especially versus other kinds of flip-flops that have zero sort of support. So in my house, you will see me in my OOFOS and maybe even walking the dog, but that's about
I
it.
mean, we're not known as runners for having the sexiest feet.
That is true.
Yeah. But we look taller because these things are like an inch off the ground.
So I mean, I do the we'll go back and recap everything, because the recovery can start before the run, but the recovery continues through the run, and then when you get home from the run, and then all the time between, it includes what you're eating, how you're sleeping, and then getting you back out there to be a consistent runner. Because Maria, I know that's what we've talked about, is we want people to be able to run for forever, run until they're 95. But if you're depleting yourself and not recovering, that's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
Stretching real quick.
Oh, stretching. Yes, we'll take that.
Stretching are like eggs. They change their mind every 5 years if it's good for you or not, right? But we will tell you now, a lot of the stuff says dynamic or stretching with movement before. After, if you're going to do the static stretch, do it after. So it's a personal choice. I tend to feel better if I do some light stretching after training. So that's let comfort be your determining factor there. And if you do stretch after training, I would say stretch to a O, but not a ow, right? Like, don't go into the plastic region, just a gentle light stretch, and maybe hold it for a longer duration. But you don't have to kill it to where you're like the V-sit and reach when you're in elementary school and go as hard as you can.
What do you think about the new cryo stuff? Have you used it at all?
So explain what that is first of all, and then
Cryotherapy is where you go into a chamber that's very, very cold, and it's supposed to reduce inflammation. The research is pretty mixed on it, because we want inflammation after we run, because that's what's helping us build our muscles stronger. But some people swear by it for recovery, going into one of those chambers.
Yeah, I've heard that it does provide a little bit of a benefit. So I haven't tried it myself. Again, it's one of those 1%ers. Like, if you're sleeping enough and icing your knees after the run or whatever, then go try cryo. That kind of thing.
I'll tell you what, it is mentally very difficult.
Is it?
I've done it a bunch, but it's good for your mental game.
But so, and then speaking of it, what's the cold plunging?
Oh yeah, that's new too.
That's cold plunge, and you're
But
supposed to go
actually,
get
they're
right in a
saying-
sauna and going back and forth. And
Yeah, they're saying with cold plunging that you should actually do it before running.
Really?
Yeah, because of that inflammation process. Yeah.
Just to get in front of the inflammation?
Yep, in front of the inflammation. Then before we run, but we don't always have the ability. That's extra special.
that is an extra special.
But you know what? There's all these clinics that are popping up now for recovery. They actually have in Jacksonville. I haven't noticed here, but in Jacksonville they have recovery clinics all over the place. It's like, it's the one I go to is called Degree Wellness, and it's a place where you go and you can cold plunge, you can sauna, they have Epsom salt baths and stuff like that you can do for recovery. So even people are catching on to how important recovery is. They are. And then you can, for a monthly fee, use all those big expensive tools without paying for them yourself. Yeah.
And they have a nap room, because that would be nice too.
Yeah, they really should
do
that.
A nap room. Yes. Oh, we would definitely take advantage of that. But hopefully that comes up. I do appreciate that now people aren't, there's not just places to go hard all the time. It's this like, hey, let's take a step back. Let's recover so that, and that is becoming in vogue right now.
It's the pendulum, right? We always go this far this way, then we go this far this way, and then we find the middle. Right?
Hopefully we do. I forgot to mention one thing with recovering before you're done training is if you have access to softer surfaces to run on.
Yes, absolutely.
Your legs just feel not as beaten up. I've seen like a synopsis of a study that says our bodies know no difference if you run on concrete versus asphalt versus grass. And I'm calling BS on that, because I feel a major difference if I go out and do a harder run on grass or a harder, longer run on the concrete. I feel just so much better with softer surfaces. And so those who don't have access, like I live in St. Pete, and it's beach and concrete, right? Like, so you utilize those softer shoes instead. So have
Makes
something
sense.
a little softer under your foot.
Yeah, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
There's no need to
I like
always be as uncomfortable as what people feel like you have to be uncomfortable for it to be a good workout. And while you do push yourself, you also have to make yourself where you're able to get back out there.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so we're ready for Maria's coach's drill. Y'all ready? So if you don't know what this is, we know that Maria has very, very hard thoughts on things. So we give her a minute where she gets to tell us whatever she wants for a minute. And so we call it the coach's drill. Overtraining versus under recovery.
Yes, so it's really trendy to say I have overtraining syndrome. Like, that's a big thing. And I'm not saying that there's not such a thing as overtraining, but I would argue that there's less overtraining and there's more under recovering. And you can train as hard as you'd like to train as long as you're recovering as hard as you can for that training. So typically we like to train hard, but we don't like to do that extra recovery stuff in order to do it. And so, but we're easy to say, oh, hey, I overtrained, so I need to back off. So I'm going to back off of training and I'm going to blame my coach because she pushed me too hard. But really, I'm under recovering by not sleeping, and I'm not eating enough, and I'm not doing the things that I need to do to support my training. So let's stop using overtraining and let's start saying that I'm under recovering. How about that?
I think that is a wonderful minute. There you go. So yes, you could say it is really, in vogue.
It's still technically overtraining,
right? But by saying you're overtraining, it's look how hard look how much I did. Like I didn't get enough sleep because I was training so hard. Well,
it's cooler to say I was training really, really hard and then I got overtrained than it is to say, oh, I was sleeping 10 hours a night or I was sleeping 5 hours a night. It's not cool to say I was sleeping enough and I was eating enough and I'm resting enough. It's not cool. So let's make it cooler.
Until you work a morning shift and whenever you get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, you let everyone know. You're like, I am so excited because we don't ever get enough sleep.
We should talk about recovery, like with the fever that we do.
Yes.
Of training. Like there needs to be a David Goggins of recovery. Maybe that's your thing,
that's
Coach.
Exactly
like, you need to get your compression socks on right now.
Because I love David Goggins. I love him, but I can tell, like, oh, David Goggins he's very hardcore and I'm in my 40s. I know that we have to take that. But my 21-year-old is like, David Goggins. Yeah, David Goggins. Can we please have somebody that's that tough on recovery? I really need that.
I think that's you.
I was going to say, I think that could be Maria.
Pick up the flag. I'll follow you. Let's do this.
I will follow you.
Well, yeah, you're telling me to sleep and eat well? Okay.
It is true. I try to say it. I try to say it a lot.
It's moms 30 years ago everywhere. Yeah. They're like, I've been telling you.
Yeah. You're empty nester now. You could be everybody's mom.
That's right.
Go to bed.
Everybody's
Go
mom.
to bed. Brush
That's
your teeth, which is really, do the roller. Brush your teeth. Go to the dentist. Eat your vegetables. That's you.
Right.
Yes.
That's us. Old empty nest. I need it. I'll change it. I'm going to change it right now.
Is this going to be on TikTok or no?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Maria the mom.
I'm not so good on TikTok. I'm just good at watching TikTok.
And it's the basics. It's the basic thing, like a 10-second thing that's like, you better eat your vegetables.
Yeah. Did you brush your teeth?
Yeah.
And when like a little kid, you're like, did you really? Did you really? Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, no.
Yeah.
When's the last time you flossed? Like you could have this could be big.
Yeah, it could be big. We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Cody, for coming in and bringing in all the tools and for letting us know how important, how we should be just as passionate about recovery as we are about the training that we do, that we already are passionate about. Thank you, guys. Yeah. We'll see you on Run for Fun next week.
For
Bye.
Sure.